Hello, everybody. This is Jacob here with the Trademark Company. I'm doing another podcast with a Mr. John Rice here with WinCrafting Professional. John, say hello to the people.
Hello, people, and welcome to Jacob's wonderful process of bringing people forth.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. John has written the book called WinCrafting Professional and has a lot of great insights. He's been in business for a couple of years now and has been being very successful. Has a lot of people that have read his book and has a lot of listeners and readers. So, John, just talk about yourself a little bit. Tell everybody who you are and how you came to create the book WinCrafting Professional, and just tell us more about you.
Well, the book is actually titled WinCrafting, and my trademark is WinCrafting Professional. And you mentioned I've been doing this a couple years, and it's quite a few decades at this point that I've been doing this. I started to do, there were three of us in the United States that introduced mediation, suggested that was a better thing. We're lawyers, and my wife and I are both lawyers, and we agreed that, it's better than the adversary process. It's bad enough when people get into battles with each other of one sort or another and have arguments, and you know how you're over 3 years old, it's tough to be in a conflict on a given day, and when the conflict actually accelerates to the point that they're going to court against each other and there's an adversary process. And our thought was, if we could sit down with people, I founded the Win-Win Institute again decades ago, and there's that moment in life where you figure out, if you and I are in conflict, I'm not going to win unless you do. Now, how do we do that? And it's not what we've been trained to do. It's a win-lose world, too bad, and I'm not going to lose. So now people push and fight against each other. Awesome. And I've done nearly 10,000 quote mediations, which I think is an out-of-date phrase, a very good phrase. People are familiar with it, but now it's become WinCrafting. How do we craft a win for everybody concerned? And that's what I've been preoccupied with. It usually takes me 20, 30 minutes. People sent to me, including by the court, really protracted, very difficult conflicts. And we can call something a conflict or a problem. I could introduce you, Jacob, to somebody and say, he can be kind of a problem. What human can you not say that of? But it doesn't define what's available in relationship with you, nor in a conflict or problem. That's a label. And what you really have is raw materials. You're going to create something. Now, what might you create that would be at least as beautiful as the most beautiful music you've ever heard? And that's a very different question to ask people than, how do we manage this screwed up mess? And so we work through to find something that people would love to create with those raw materials. So that's what I do with people, and we call it WinCrafting. And my recently published book is this, WinCrafting.
Beautiful.
I think that my goal, including in this podcast and in talking with people and working with people at this point, having become, what's the nickname they have for us at the gym? Old, I think. Having become kind of an old guy. These ideas are considered breakthrough. I've taught at national conferences, American Psychological Association, American Bar Association. That's the lawyers. I think most people know that. American Bar Association, not the bartenders. They'd be smart to study with me too, but given who they work with. But the idea is to teach. I've taught at the National Education Association, their staff, people in churches, schools, businesses all across the country, and taught individuals from all over the world. And the idea, this is a major breakthrough in being effective around conflict, and I want everybody to have it. So we're about to start leading free webinars that anybody in the world can attend. And it's very exciting, and we really appreciate all the amazing help that you guys have given us at the Trademark Company in getting the word out about this and setting my trademark, which is WinCrafting Professional.
Thank you, John. Thank you for all that insight. And also, with that being said, we're going to leave links to John's website in the description of this podcast, and also on our YouTube channel, where you can check out the book directly right after watching this podcast. So also, just one of the biggest questions we asked here at the Trademark Company for the podcast is, why did you start WinCrafting in the first place? Every business owner has a why, John, the reason why they chose this route or this career path. We want to know your reason for choosing the business path, so that we can help our listeners understand what motivated your success.
Oh, well, that goes way back for me. During my childhood, I had the experience of a lot of conflict in my life and around me, and some of it directed toward me. And it just raised a question in me. There's just got to be a better way, is there? And I started to look around and eventually, began studying such things. And after college, I went to work at the United Nations. I've been the Secretary General of the largest student model UN in the world. And the whole idea was represent a point of view other than your own and take a look at that point of view. And I went to the United Nations, set up an educational program, brought students from all over the world. The Tanzanians, who were amazing, came here and they represented the United Kingdom's point of view, which at the time was about the farthest thing from their own point of view. And they met a young fellow named Nick Finn. So he was one of the members of the British mission to the United Nations. And I began meeting people like ambassadors and so on. And you don't get to be in a role like that or work at the UN unless you've had some success around conflict. And I started to ask them, how did you produce that result? And they'd want to tell me the story of what happened. I had read their books and articles, I knew that. And I would say to them, I understand that, I know what happened, but what were the steps? How did you get from very minus to very plus? And they did not know the steps. So that put me in an inquiry. When a conflict goes away around someone, we call it conflict disappearance. When a conflict goes away, what are the steps to get to very plus? And because it happens with people, and that's what has evolved into WinCrafting over time. I can tell people there are 3 steps. Every time a conflict went away from you, it's the same 3 steps, and it's incredibly wonderful to know them, and I want everybody to know those. So that was kind of the evolution, which literally took decades. I mean, this wasn't an overnight thing. It was just, there's got to be a better way than this. There is. Some people are very successful around conflict, so what are they doing? And inquiring into that at enough of a deep level that could find out what they actually did, even when they didn't know. They were intuitively brilliant and they would work through things like that, but in terms of knowing the steps, they didn't, but now we know them.
Awesome. Thank you for that one, John. Another question to answer here. Let's see. How does where you're starting happened, like basically when you first started the book? How does it look versus now when you finally started pumping out the book? How does your business look now versus when you first started it?
Oh my goodness.
Going back again, huh?
Yeah, well, it does, and it's really quite the variable. I mean, one of the things I had to do, I've told people for a long time, I'm a talker, not a writer. And so the idea, I had a lot of people tell me, you need to write a book about this because people will have better access. This was really started in before internet even existed, and that was writing a book is the way to do that. And now we can do things like podcasts too. But it's, this was the way to get the word out about something, to write a book. And I had to pretty much put myself in a cave for a long time to write it. It took me a long time to write it because I would like to think my wife says it's a terrific readable book, but I'd be bragging if I said it, but she thinks that, and I do think it conveys what people need to know. You read that, you have a really good chance of not being chewed alive by conflict. And, so it was a matter of over the years, really discerning, now what are the steps? And okay, wait a minute, that can't be the step that you start with because that's not working for people. But what happens when you start here? And that evolved into the current understanding of being really profoundly and quickly effective. And I mean really effective, like everybody winning when there's a conflict. And even when it's, oh my gosh, it can be the human resource department. They've got 18 people fighting and they've had 3 people quit. And that costs people, costs business a lot of money to lose key people. And so introducing that so people can get past things like that is just helpful everywhere. I mean, conflict undermines almost everything we do. So this uplifts instead of that.
Yeah, it sounds like your book and what you do is very uplifting and it helps change people's lives for the better. Is that what you would say is one of your favorite parts about what you do, is helping people and helping people move forward in their lives? Or is there maybe other favorite parts of what you do?
That's pretty much it. And one of the things that has just been odd about my life, when I started talking about win-win, I got just chewed alive by people I thought of them as friends and colleagues. They were lawyers and therapists, and they would say to me, it's a win-lose world. You're defrauding people, saying win-win. And I was like, that was pretty brutal for me. I was a young lawyer, and the presiding judge of our domestic relations court here in Arizona called me into his office and he glared at me. He's this old line pioneer family, great judge. Became a mentor and friend, but he glared at me in a fun way, in a sense. But he said, "What are you doing? Your cases are all reconciling and dismissing from my courtroom." So I described to him what I was doing. And he had me introduce those ideas to all of Arizona's judges. And 3 months, that was a few weeks later, and 3 months later, they turned that into state law. That before you can go to an adversary trial, you have to at least attempt a mediation. Well, I was in a supermarket here, and I was walking down an aisle, and into the aisle came an attorney. I did not know her. I knew of her. I knew who she was, but she had said some just horrible things to mutual friends of ours, and I'd heard them about me and about that I was defrauding. One of the people saying I was defrauding people, and so on with this win-win stuff. And here she comes into the aisle from the other side that I'm walking in. And I'm saying this because this is so typical of my days. If I go out, something like this is going to happen if there are other humans in the vicinity. And I thought as soon as she saw me, she'd back out of the aisle, but she didn't. She kept walking toward me, and I looked up at her, just kind of glanced. I first pretended I didn't know she was in the aisle. I was trying to give her the space to, extricate herself from that. But I looked up, and she was still walking toward me, and she had, I think, maybe the most distraught look I've ever seen on a human face. She looked really bad. She came up next to me, and she said, "I know you've heard all the awful things I've said about you." And I said, "Well, I can't imagine I've heard all of them, but I've sure heard some of them." And she said, I'm in the worst conflict I've ever been in my life. My life is horrible right now. Would you please help me? And I stood and led a seminar. Boy, I'm in tears remembering how it felt. I stood and led a seminar for her for about 45 minutes right in the aisle. And by the end, toward the end of that, she just lit up. It's like, oh my gosh, then we could do this. And I mean, when people are in a conflict, it's like they've got a big red filter in front of their face, and they're, pardon my language, but they're, oh shit, it's red out there. And I said, put the filter down. You've got raw materials. You can create something. And when we talked about it from that point of view, she saw something just gorgeous that she and the people that she was involved with in this could create, and she was no longer in conflict. And it usually takes me a few minutes of talking with people, because that is just it's just emanating from people, from their spirit, but it's not what people look for. It's more like, what's the matter, sweetie, or whatever it is. And I can give you another story if you'd like, that would be a similar thing.
Go ahead.
Example. I was teaching all of the therapists and teachers in about a 5-city area here at one of our local high schools. So it's about 250 people in one of the high schools in a big auditorium. And we went to lunch at the school cafeteria we just took a break. And while we were sitting in the cafeteria, this kid walked in. He looked 15 on his face, but he was over 6'8", maybe the most muscular human being I've ever seen. He's just huge, very strong looking. He leaned up against a wall and he's scoping the place out. Kids are making a 20-foot circle around him. They're obviously afraid of him. And he looked kind of mean on his face. I didn't really understand that. And I asked one of the teachers in that school, who am I seeing? This guy's got my attention. She said, this kid has tremendous potential, but he's also a very bad bully. So that got my attention. I got up, I walked over to him. He's tall, I'm short. I looked way up and said, can I ask you a few questions, maybe uncomfortable, kind of personal. I knew it was too tough to say no. And he said, sure. And I said, so if your life works out the way you hope it's going to work out, who do you hope to become? And he straightened up, and with a lot of dignity and pride, he said, I'm going to be a Marine like my father and grandfather. And he meant it. And the look on his face was just amazing. And I said, so second question, and I call that the new Sherlock Holmes game. When you want to find out what's a win for somebody, there's so much just billowing what's a loss that you have to look for hints of what they really want in the situation. So, okay, Marine, he wants people to know he's tough and all of that, but being a bully is a very junior negative symbol of that. So I asked him, second thing, have you ever bullied anyone? The look of guilt was so fast he could not hide it. And I said, third, that squeaky looking little boy sitting over 5 tables away, sitting all by himself over lunch, hunched over, looks very depressed, not eating with friends. Have you ever bullied him? And he said, I've never bullied him, but I've sure seen other people in the school bully him. Okay, I've got him now. So I said to him, let me ask you a question. I worry about a kid like this. He's going to commit suicide. He's so squashed that he's not going to blossom in his life, at least. But what if he breaks through it all and he becomes the pediatrician who saves your child's life? I mean, his grandfather, his father, himself, his child, he had given me that hint that would matter to him on that level. And he took a step back And the look on his face was so, it still is so moving to me. He had never thought to look at another human being like that. And he just stared at this kid and said, so how would it be? You're too young to be a Marine, but that space, women and children, this is a child you're looking at. How would it be if you become his best friend in this school? You encourage him in his studies, you have lunch with him every day, and you let everyone in this school know he's under your protection. And he'll never bully anybody again, and I don't think he'll ever allow anybody to bully anybody again. And it took 7 minutes, you know. So it's a very thrilling thing to be looking for that when you see it, because everybody looking at him was thinking, bully, what a terrible, et cetera, but it wasn't who he hoped to become, what a senior symbol of that would be for him. So that's the kind of thing WinCrafting is. You're looking for very senior symbols of what somebody wants in this circumstance for everybody concerned, including themselves, and it affects things like people's health. I mean, you know, you're in conflict, it affects your health in a negative way, and people die from that, not to mention the whole suicide rate that happens. So it's very thrilling to, you know, even when we're walking around, and almost, my wife and I never go anywhere, it seems like, without bumping into somebody that has an issue and wants to talk, and we're off to the races talking. So now getting to do that in webinars all over the world is very thrilling, and having like in a seminar that I used to lead, there'd be 40-50 people in a room, and we had limited the number of people in the room. We'll do that with webinars too, so it can be interactive. But to be able to have people interact, and somebody in the room invariably will say, I've got this terrible issue, and you work through it with them, and everybody gets to watch that. And the role model of it is phenomenal, and we'll be recording some of it and that kind of thing. So that's what we're up to. And it's very exciting. And I mean, I know, Jacob, I know you've done that. You've helped friends that were in some very minus situation. You take them by the hand and walk them toward plus as far as you can. So knowing what you did that lets you be effective in a given moment makes it so much easier. I mean, people do that instinctively, but they have mixed results, like the ambassadors did. But to know the steps, invaluable when you're helping people as well as when you've got your own situation to deal with.
Awesome, John. Wow, what a great 2 examples of what you do to help people in the real world right there on the spot, or, you know, also in your book itself. I really appreciate you going through that in detail. I do have another question for you, then also leading up to closing this out. What advice would you give someone just starting out, either business related or just starting out their own book about maybe even just lifestyle, or even helping others out like you've been helping people out? Well, what advice would you give?
Well, the first thing, people have to know, if I said to you, Jacob, can I interest you in a reasonable relationship? You'd say no, right? You want more than that. But people take a job, they do things in their life they think they can succeed at, and what they're not looking for is what they would, you know, if there was such a thing as a magic wand. There's not, but if there was, what would your job be? And it's thrilling to ask people that, and to have them really look at what they would love to have happen in this particular circumstance, what they'd love to have happen in their relationships, in their educational and career path. I mean, people take a job because they're taking it because they'll make some money. There was one fellow, he was considered an absolute genius in the IT field. This is a long time ago. And how I met him was his boss phoned and said, we're going to fire him from, you'd know the company if I named it, and a big, huge company. And because we all think he's drinking or doing drugs or something, he's screwing up everything in detail that you just wouldn't believe. And things that are easy, he's even screwing up. And so I got together with him and I said to him, you know, first question, I mean, you know, everybody thinks you're drinking, doing drugs. He said, I'm not. I've never done that. And he meant it, and it was clear that was true. And I said, so is this your dream job that you've been in? He started crying. He was about 45. And he just started sobbing. He hadn't been asked that. He said, no. And I said, well, what would your dream job have been? And he said, well, I had a grandfather who I adored, and I was a very little child, and he died. And if I had been a doctor, I could have saved his life. And I've always, my whole life, wanted to have been a doctor. And instead I took this job because I'd make a lot of money, and I'm good at it, but I'm not passionate about it. So finding his passion, and I said to him, so why don't you apply to med school now? And he rolled his eyes. I'd sure they're going to accept me in my 40s, and I said, they are doing that in med schools and law schools because they have accepted people for years who were really good at math or science, and then they get into medicine and they don't like it as a profession because it isn't their passion. And I said, I don't think you'd even have a 1% chance of getting in. I was kind of challenging him with that. I said, but what if you did have a 1% or less chance? What would you have to lose by applying? And he just was very sarcastic about this, and he disappeared. And he disappeared from our city. None of us saw him again. We didn't know what happened to him. 5 years later, he came to my wife and I's door with a huge thing of flowers for us as a thank you, because he was now a doctor. And he had done that, and it was very moving. So the advice I'd give, the first thing is you've just got to find, if not to proselytize you, but if there was such a thing as God and there was a miracle for all concerned, including the people you would interact with, what difference do you really in your heart want to be making with people? And I inquire into that with people, and when they look there, it is amazing what they see, and it affects their jobs and their relationships. So you have to look for the thing that the thing that would be a win, but not just a win with a small W, a capital W. The book, I didn't tell all 10,000 stories. I think I left 4 of them out, but the book has a lot of stories of people that have been in that inquiry. And that's the first thing that I work with people, is because it defines who the person is. It's like when I meet somebody, I want to know, who are you? I have that question about you. Who are you, but who are you becoming? If people have the very best access to you, who are you becoming? So that's the first thing that I talk with people about. And it's laid out in the book and examples of it. But for the most part, we've been in a survival-based world. You take a job where you make enough money to survive. But now, especially with lifespan just expanding phenomenally. Before the Civil War, it was about 20 here, and 24, 25 in Europe. And now, people are, what was the word I used earlier, getting old, and they're in good shape and all of that. And, so being able to inquire, it used to be a survival-based world, and you're looking at what's the threat and how can I make enough money too. But now we're more interested, a lot of people, I think almost everybody's more interested in thriving. So what would it take to thrive? What would be the ideal job for you? And how do we be in a discussion so you begin walking down that path?
Awesome.
What you're helping people to do by setting up interviews like this.
Awesome.
Because somebody else, you'll do an interview with somebody else, and somebody will watch it and think, that's the job I'd love to be doing. Or I'd like their help, or I would love to be doing a job like that. So thank you again for what you've been doing with this.
Yeah, no problem, John. Thank you for sharing that advice as well. And I'm sure a lot of people that are listening now will be able to use that advice and apply it to their own life, whether it's business related or just personally related to them. So thank you for sharing that. I also wanted to finish this off with a question that we ask every single business owner. What we're going to ask you is, since you're involved with the trademarking process, you trademarked WinCrafting Professional. We know that we helped you along the way. Please tell everyone the importance of starting that immediately so that everyone can get going on that right now, especially if you're a business owner.
Well, it's part of what I was just talking about. How do you figure out who you are? If there, it's like the thing you'd love to have your life be about. And if you find that out, what you're going to find is there's got to be a name for that. And there wasn't a thing called WinCrafting Professional. I kind of had to make that up. But but if you can find the thing you're passionate about and you name it so that people begin to understand, if I'm in a conflict, maybe I should look up WinCrafting, or if I'm needing help. We have a fellow named Chet, who the guy is fabulous at helping anything you need around your house. When the house has issues, like all spaces do. So I don't know if he would find a particular label for what he does, because he isn't just what's the phrase they use for that? He isn't just a handyman. He functions at a different level than that, and it's real specific. So I would urge him, find a name for that and consider trademarking it, so people, have it be real clear what it means, even if people have to learn what WinCrafting is or what that phrase you came up with was. But that way, if people come up with something like that and they get your help, because your company is phenomenal with that, really wonderful help with it, in getting people's trademark actually established with U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, all of that. And you could help, it helps other humans be able to reach out to them at something they are really, really good at. And when they, so I wouldn't just trademark something. It's a trademark is I don't know, it's like Mount Everest to me. It tells people, if you're on this mountain, I can help you,
Yeah, definitely. The trademarking process is obviously not an easy one. That's why you want to hire professionals to take care of that process. It's especially, if you've ever received an office action before, it's like reading like alien technology language, that letter that they send you. So we here at the Trademark Company do help with weeding through that information to help
Jacob,
get through that. So yeah,
I'd like to make a comment, because I think what you're saying is a 1,000,000% true, but very understated. I wanted to do this, but I have an area where I'm really gifted and I can help people, and setting up a trademark isn't it. So you need to find, that's exactly what I was talking about. So how do you set up a trademark for the Trademark Company that would distinguish you from other people? I'll give you that little challenge. You'll come up, maybe you spell the word "the" in capital letters, the Trademark Company, because to me that's what you guys are and do. That's exactly what I meant about Chet. He can really help with a specific thing, and you guys are phenomenal at that. You walked me through that, and we'll see if they approve the trademark, but we've at least put it in position to be approved, and that's something you guys walked us through every step of the way. And this is a very sophisticated company you're part of, and it's people should be working with you when they want to go down that path.
Thank you, John. And the great thing about yours is you're literally on the last step of the process, which we already finalized. So literally they just have to review everything that we submitted and you're good to go. So your trademark's registered at this point, which is awesome. So
it's exciting, isn't it?
Exactly. It's very exciting. It's pretty much one of the best things a business owner can hear at the end of the day, is that they're accepted, they're official, and now they can just rest at ease knowing that their trademark is protected and their brand is protected. So
and it also, and in turn, that people will be able to find them and understand who they are and come to them. It's a way of really, it's neon lights over the thing that you really are passionate about and that people should come to you to do. And
exactly.
I want everybody to end up with their trademark, whatever that means.
Exactly.
I guess we could do some partnership on that. I could talk with people and you do that part.
Appreciate that. Thank you, John. So just to wrap this up, thank you so much, John, for your time today. We really appreciate your advice and information that you've given our audience today. I hope that we can do another collab here soon. I know we will. Just real quick, just pause the video here for a second. We're gonna share the screen here so that we can take a look at John's website. Right here, we got John's WinCrafting website. I'll again leave a link in the description. Here you can see everything about the book, some information, and you can also purchase the book here, right here, right now as well. So I'll leave the link in the description for anybody that's interested, and order your book now. So just getting back to our video here. And just to wrap things up, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, John, go ahead.
I just would like to say that anybody that reads the book or that wants to work on something like this, drop me an email, contact me through the website, whatever you do. I would love to work with you, and I just really invite you to do that. If you happen to be in the Phoenix area, stop by the house. I just moved into a new house, and we've had a few visitors, and we've talked with a few of them about this. We also travel to teach and do what we do, but reach out to us if we can help. We would love to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, John, for your time. Just to talk to the listeners, when you have a new product launching or even want to share any of your ideas with us here at the Trademark Company, reach out so we can feature you on our next podcast. We love talking.
Sorry about that phone ringing on you there. I didn't.
Oh.
that was going to happen. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
You're fine. No, we love talking to new or established business owners so we can help each other achieve success. So if you're a business owner in need of brand protection also, the first thing you want to do is file a trademark to protect what's yours. So head on over to the Trademark Company website now to talk to one of our live agents right this minute and again, protect what's yours. Don't let anyone steal your hard-earned work. We make legal easy here at the Trademark Company. For now, that's all we have. Stay tuned for our next podcast where we have new businesses join every single time and share knowledge to the world. Have a great day, everyone. And John, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.